Dr. Kenneth Holt slammed his clipboard against Rachel Shepard's chest and shoved her backward. "I said, stay back, Shepard. You're limping. You're useless. Get out of my trauma bay." She stumbled. Her bad leg buckled. Every nurse in the ER watched her grab the counter to keep from hitting the floor. No one said a word. No one ever did. That was 9:03 p.m., Tuesday night, January 14th, St. Mercy General Hospital, Baltimore, Maryland. At 9:04 p.m., the ceiling exploded with the sound of 4 Marine helicopters slamming onto the roof, and a colonel's voice ripped through every speaker in the building. "We need Angel 6, now." Holt didn't know that the woman he just shoved was the most decorated combat surgeon the Navy had ever produced. He was about to find out. If this story moves you, subscribe to our channel and stay until the very end. Drop a comment with the city you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. Rachel Shepard heard the words before she saw the clipboard. "You're limping again, Shepard. Stay in triage." Dr. Kenneth Holt didn't look up when he said it. He was scanning his patient board, checking off names, running his ER the way he always did. Like a man who believed control was the same thing as competence. Rachel stopped walking. She shifted her weight to her right leg. The left one ached tonight. It always ached when the temperature dropped, but she'd learned to hide it. 3 years of practice. 3 years of making herself small enough to fit inside a job that asked nothing of her except obedience. "Understood, Dr. Holt. Sort the incoming charts. We've got a possible cardiac coming in by ambulance. Stay off your feet." She nodded and turned back toward the triage desk. A younger nurse, Becky, fresh out of school, eager and loud, glanced at Rachel as she passed. "You okay? You're favoring that leg again." "I'm fine. You should get it looked at." "I said I'm fine." Becky raised her hands and backed off. Rachel sat down behind the desk and picked up a stack of intake forms. Her hands were steady. They were always steady. That was the one thing she couldn't turn off no matter how hard she tried. She'd been at St. Mercy General for 3 years. Floor nurse. Night shift. The position nobody wanted. She took it on purpose. No pressure. No decisions that mattered. No one's life depending on what her hands did in the next 30 seconds. That was the deal she'd made with herself. And for 3 years, it held. The ER moved around her like a machine. Residents rushed past. Monitors beeped. Holt barked orders from his station, his voice carrying that particular tone of a man who needed everyone to know he was in charge. Rachel sorted charts, filed paperwork, stayed invisible. Then the ceiling shook. Not an earthquake, not a truck hitting the building. Something else, something deeper, rhythmic, getting louder. The overhead lights swayed. A coffee cup rattled off a counter and shattered on the floor. Becky looked up. "What the hell is that?" Rachel knew what it was before anyone else in that ER. She knew the sound the way you know your own heartbeat. The thud, thud, thud of military rotors cutting through cold air. Heavy birds. More than one. She stood up. Her left leg screamed, but she stood up. The sound grew deafening. The windows flexed in their frames. Someone in the waiting room started yelling. A child began to cry. Then the intercom exploded. Every speaker in the building, every hallway, every room, every floor, erupted with a voice that did not belong in a civilian hospital. "St. Mercy General, this is Viper Flight, United States Marine Corps, requesting immediate ground contact. We need Angel 6. Repeat, we need Angel 6. Respond immediately." The ER froze. Holt dropped his pen. His face went white. He grabbed the nearest phone and punched the operator line. "This is Dr. Holt, ER Chief. What the hell is happening on my roof?" The operator's voice was shaking. "Sir, there are 4 military helicopters landing on the helipad. They didn't request clearance. They didn't call ahead. Security doesn't know what to." "Who is Angel 6? I don't know, sir." Holt slammed the phone down. He turned to his staff. "Does anyone know what Angel 6 means? Anyone?" Silence. Blank faces. shaking heads. Rachel didn't move. She stood behind the triage desk, her fingers gripping the edge of the counter so hard her knuckles had gone white. Her heart was hammering, not from fear, from recognition. They found me. The stairwell door crashed open. A man walked through it who did not belong in this hospital. Colonel James Westcott. Tall, hard, built like a man who'd spent 30 years refusing to break. Marine dress was replaced by combat fatigues, but the medals on his chest told the story. So did the blood on his sleeve. Fresh, red, not his own. 2 Marines flanked him, sidearms visible. Holt moved to intercept. "Sir, you can't just... This is a hospital. You need to..." Westcott walked past him like he wasn't there. His eyes swept the ER, past the residents, past the nurses, past the monitors and the gurneys, and the organized chaos of a civilian trauma center. His gaze locked onto the triage desk, onto the woman standing behind it in faded scrubs, with a limp she couldn't fully hide. "Captain Shepard," 2 words, spoken like a command. Every head in the ER turned to Rachel. Holt's mouth opened. "Captain? She's a floor nurse." Westcott didn't acknowledge him. He stepped closer to Rachel. His voice dropped, but in the silence of that frozen ER, everyone heard. "We've got 8 critical Marines and a United States Senator at 30,000 feet. Campaign planes suffered a catastrophic malfunction during flight. They attempted an emergency landing, but the storm systems across 3 states have shut down every runway on the eastern seaboard. They're stuck in the air for another 87 minutes. Rachel's jaw tightened. She said nothing. 3 Marines with tension pneumothorax, 2 with compound fractures and internal bleeding, 1 unresponsive. Senator Richard Cahill has shrapnel in his thoracic cavity, sucking chest wound. Why me? It came out before she could stop it. The question she didn't want to ask because she already knew the answer. Westcott's radio beeped. He pressed it to his ear, listened. When he looked back at her, something in his eyes had changed. Because Lieutenant Danny Brennan is on that plane, he's got a piece of the instrument panel through his chest cavity. Entry below the left clavicle, exit near the spine. He's conscious. He's asking for you. The floor dropped out from under her. Brennan. She didn't say the name out loud. She didn't have to. Her face said everything. 3 years of carefully constructed emptiness cracked in a single second. Holt stepped between them. His voice had climbed an octave. "Hold on. Just hold on 1 damn minute. I don't know what's going on here, but this woman is a floor nurse on my staff. She doesn't have surgical privileges. She limps. She can barely..." "Dr. Holt." Westcott's voice could have frozen steel. "I didn't come here for your permission. She's not qualified for..." She's performed 47 emergency thoracotomies under enemy fire in active combat zones. She's operated in sandstorms, in helicopters, in forward operating bases with no electricity and no backup. She ran a 16-hour solo trauma operation in Helmand Province and saved 12 Marines that every other surgeon had written off. The ER was dead silent. Holt looked at Rachel, really looked at her, like he was seeing her for the first time. "Is that true?" Rachel's eyes were distant, fixed on something no one else in that room could see. "Captain Shepard," Westcott's voice pulled her back. "Brennan's got maybe 12 minutes before that panel shifts and severs his subclavian artery. After that, there's nothing anyone can do. Not you, not God, not anyone." "I'm not that person anymore." Her voice cracked on the last word. "That person died in a helicopter crash 3 years ago. Then 8 Marines and a senator are going to die tonight." The radio beeped again. A voice came through, distorted, desperate. "Angel 6, this is Torres, Air Force Medical, aboard the aircraft. I've got a Marine coding. I don't know how to... Please, if you can hear me, please." Rachel closed her eyes. Behind her eyelids, she saw them. Not the Marines on that plane. The other ones. The ones from before. PFC Kyle Davies, 19 years old, baby face, broken open by an IED. She'd worked on him for 3 hours, saved him, certified him for transport, put him on a helicopter. 2 minutes after liftoff, the helicopter took fire. Davies died. All 4 patients on that bird died. And Rachel was on it too, supervising, making sure her patients were stable. Her leg got crushed under the wreckage. 2 surgeries, a medical discharge, a permanent limp that would follow her for the rest of her life. She came home, took a floor nurse position, and buried Captain Rachel Shepard, Angel 6, in a grave she swore she'd never dig up. Torres's voice crackled again. He's crashing. The Marine is crashing. I need help. Someone. Anyone. Rachel opened her eyes. She looked at Holt, at his clean white coat, at his steady, comfortable hands that had never held a man's heart while mortar rounds shook the ground, at his absolute certainty that he understood what was possible and what wasn't. Get out of my way. Holt didn't move. Shepard, you can't just... My name is Captain Rachel Shepard, United States Navy, and I have operated on more dying men in worse conditions than you will ever see in your entire career. Now get out of my way, or so help me God, I will go through you. Holt stepped aside. Rachel moved toward the stairwell. Her limp was bad. The adrenaline made it worse. It always did. Every step sent a bolt of pain up her left side. Every step was a memory. Westcott fell in beside her. 2 young Marines took positions behind them. Holt called out from behind, "You don't have surgical privileges in this hospital." She didn't turn around. "I have privileges where it counts." 23 steps to the roof. She counted them. She always counted. Step 7. She remembered the first one. Kandahar. A kid with his chest blown open. She'd cracked his ribs with her bare hands because the rib spreader was in a truck that had been destroyed an hour earlier. Step 12. Davies. His face. His smile before they loaded him onto the helicopter. "Thanks, Doc. Guess I owe you one." He never got to pay it back. Step 18. The crash. The sound of metal folding. Her leg pinned. Screaming. Not hers. The others. Then silence. The worst silence she'd ever heard. Step 23. Now, today, Brennan. She pushed through the roof access door. The wind nearly knocked her off her feet. The rotor wash was savage. 4 CH-53 Super Stallions, blades spinning, the noise like being inside a thunderclap that wouldn't end. This sound lived in her nightmares. She heard it every night when she closed her eyes. Westcott held out a flight suit. "It'll be just like old times, Captain." She took it, started pulling it on over her scrubs. The fabric settled on her shoulders like something she'd been missing without knowing it, like something she'd been running from. Nothing is like old times, Colonel. Not ever. But she zipped it up anyway. A crew chief in the nearest helicopter extended his hand through the open door. Rachel grabbed it. She didn't look back at the stairwell, where Holt and half the ER staff had crowded the doorway, watching, still not understanding. The helicopter lifted off before she'd finished strapping in. Below, the hospital fell away. The city of Baltimore spread out in grids of light. Cars on highways, houses with warm windows, people sleeping, eating dinner, watching television, living ordinary lives in an ordinary world. Rachel watched it all shrink beneath her. Then she turned forward, into the darkness, into the storm. Westcott's voice came through the headset. 87 minutes, Captain. That's what we've got." Rachel's hands were already moving, checking the medical kit mounted on the wall, feeling the instruments through the case, scalpels, clamps, chest tubes, sutures. Not enough, never enough, but it would have to be. "Welcome back, Angel 6. She didn't answer. She was looking at the storm clouds ahead, black, massive, lit from within by lightning. Somewhere behind those clouds, a plane full of broken men was falling through the sky. waiting for someone willing to do what no one else could. Rachel Shepard closed her eyes. Her hands remembered everything her heart had spent 3 years trying to forget. Brennan was dying, and she was the only one who could stop it. The helicopter banked hard to the east and Rachel's stomach dropped. Not from the motion, from the voice in her headset. Angel 6, this is Torres, Air Force Medical. I'm alone up here with 8 critical and a senator. 1 Marine just stopped breathing. I got him back, but I don't know for how long. Please tell me you're coming. Rachel pressed the headset tighter against her ear. Torres, listen to me. What's your medical background? Flight surgeon, 12 years. But I've never, not like this. Not 8 at once. Not in the air. You're not alone anymore. How long since the cabin failure? 43 minutes. Maybe 45. It happened fast. The plane shook. Something blew in the forward compartment. Shrapnel everywhere. The Marines took the worst of it. They were sitting closest to the blast point. The senator? He was further back. Took a piece of metal to the chest, but the Marines shielded him from the worst. He was stable 20 minutes ago, but he's deteriorating. Pressure's dropping. And Brennan? Torres paused. The pause told her more than his words would. Brennan's awake. He's talking. He's got a piece of the instrument panel through his chest. I can see it on both sides, Captain. Entry and exit. He won't let me touch it. He keeps saying, wait for Angel 6. Rachel closed her eyes. Stupid, stubborn, brave Danny Brennan. The kid who'd held retractors for her in a sandstorm and never once flinched. The kid who'd cried in private and been still in public. 22 when she knew him. 26 now. Still trusting her with his life. Tell him I'm 15 minutes out. Copy that. Westcott cut into the channel. Captain, there's something else you need to know. What? The plane's cabin pressure is compromised. They've managed partial pressurization, but it's fluctuating. You'll be operating in conditions equivalent to about 8,000 feet. Your instruments will behave differently. Your patient's blood will behave differently. I've operated at 12,000 feet in an unpressurized Black Hawk, Colonel. 8,000 is a vacation. Westcott almost smiled. Almost. There's also the turbulence. Storm cells across the entire eastern seaboard. The pilot is threading between them, but he can't avoid all of it. Expect significant jolts every 30 to 40 seconds. Rachel opened the medical kit and started organizing. Laid everything out on the bench seat beside her. Scalpels in order, clamps by size, chest tubes, sutures. She counted again. The numbers hadn't changed. Still not enough. Colonel, I need more surgical supplies than what's in this kit. There's a second kit on the plane. Torres has it. Is there blood? 4 units of O negative. That's it. For 9 patients. That's what was on board for the senator's detail. Standard medical loadout. 4 units, 9 patients. Rachel did the math, and the math was ugly. She'd have to choose who got blood and who didn't. Triage at its most brutal. Not who needs help, but who can survive without it. I need you to radio ahead to whatever hospital we're landing at. I want 20 units of O-neg, a full surgical team, and a trauma bay prepped for mass casualty. The second that plane touches down, I want those patients off and into surgery within 4 minutes. Already done. Johns Hopkins is standing by. Good. Rachel finished organizing the kit. Her hands moved with a precision that surprised even her. 3 years of filing charts and taking vitals, and her fingers still knew exactly where every instrument should be. Muscle memory was a stubborn thing. It lived in the bones, in the tendons, in the neural pathways that 3 years of grief couldn't erase. Torres came back on the line. His voice was higher now, tighter. Angel 6, the unresponsive Marine. I just checked his pupils again, both fixed and dilated. I think he's gone, Torres. Silence on the line. You know it, and I know it. Don't spend another second on him. Focus on the ones you can save. I can't just... He's right here. He's right in front of me. What's his name? Corporal Webb, Jason Webb, he's 23. Rachel's throat tightened. 23, the same age as Davies when she lost him. Torres, I need you to hear me. Jason Webb is gone. You did everything you could. But there are 7 people on that plane who are alive right now and won't be if you don't focus. Can you do that for me? A long breath, ragged. Then, yes, ma'am. Good. Now tell me about the 3 pneumothorax cases. Left or right side? 2 right, 1 left. The left side one is the worst. Trachea is deviated. He's barely getting air. Needle decompression. Do it now. Don't wait for me. What if I... Second intercostal space, mid-clavicular line. You've done this in simulation. Simulation, yeah, not on a real... Torres, he dies in the next 3 minutes if you don't put a needle in his chest. Do it now, I'll stay on the line. She heard rustling, heard Torres talking to the Marine, telling him to stay still, telling him it would be okay. She heard the hiss of the needle breaking through, the sudden rush of trapped air escaping. The Marine gasped, a deep, desperate, beautiful sound. Oh my God, it worked. He's breathing again. Of course it worked. You just saved his life. Now stabilize him and move to the next one. Westcott looked at Rachel across the helicopter. His expression had changed. The urgency was still there, but underneath it was something else. Recognition. The look of a man watching someone become who they were always supposed to be. Rachel didn't notice. She was already thinking 3 steps ahead. Triage order, time estimates, what she could do with 2 scalpels, 4 clamps, and not enough blood. The helicopter pilot's voice cut in. 5 minutes to intercept, visual on the aircraft. Torres, I'm almost there. I need you to clear a space near the center of the cabin. 2 seats pulled together, flat surface. Get every light source you have pointed at it. That's my operating table. Copy. Captain, one more thing. What? Brennan keeps asking me the time. Every 2 minutes. He asks what time it is. Why? He says he's counting. He says he knows how long he's got before the metal shifts. He did the math in his head. He says he's got 18 minutes. Rachel's heart stopped for a full beat. That was Brennan. That was exactly Brennan. Lying there with a piece of an airplane through his chest. And instead of panicking, he was calculating. Because she'd taught him that. In Kandahar, in the sand, in the worst moments of both their lives, she'd taught him that panic kills and math saves. Tell him to stop counting. Tell him I said that's an order. Torres almost laughed. I don't think he takes orders from me, Captain. Then tell him Angel 6 says to shut up and breathe. This time Torres did laugh. Short, broken, but real. The first human sound he'd made since the crisis started. The helicopter dropped altitude. Rachel felt the pressure change in her ears and in her gut. Ahead, somewhere in the darkness and the storm, a plane was falling apart with 7 living people inside it. 7 people whose names she didn't all know yet. 7 people who were about to become hers. 30 seconds to transfer, the pilot called. Westcott gripped her shoulder. The transfer is midair. We'll match speed and altitude with the plane and open the emergency hatch. You'll have a gap of about 4 feet. Crew chief will guide you across. 4 feet? At 30,000 feet? In a storm? I've done worse. I know you have. Westcott squeezed her shoulder once and let go. That's why you're here. The helicopter lurched sideways, matching the plane's trajectory. Rachel could feel the 2 aircraft finding each other, the pilots negotiating with physics and wind, and the thin margin between rescue and catastrophe. The crew chief slid the door open. Wind screamed into the cabin. Cold hit her like a wall of knives. Through the gap, she could see the plane's fuselage. Close, impossibly close. The emergency hatch already open. Torres's face visible in the red emergency lighting, pale and terrified, and waiting for her. Go! The crew chief shouted. Rachel didn't think about the gap, Didn't think about the 4 feet of empty air between the helicopter and the plane. Didn't think about the 30,000 feet of nothing below her boots. Didn't think about her leg, which was screaming at her with every nerve it had left. She jumped. Torres caught her, pulled her through the hatch. She hit the floor of the plane and the smell hit her at the same time. Blood, jet fuel, copper, sweat, fear. The smell of a place where people were dying. She was on her feet in 2 seconds. Her leg buckled once and she caught herself on a bulkhead. Torres stared at her. "You're hurt. Old injury. Ignore it. Where's Brennan?" Aft of the cabin, against the rear bulkhead. Rachel moved through the plane, bodies everywhere. Marines, young, broken, bleeding. She assessed as she moved. Automatic, clinical. Her brain divided into 2 halves, the half that felt and the half that worked. The working half took over. The feeling half went into a box. She found Brennan. He was propped against the rear wall. A piece of jagged metal protruded from below his left collarbone, angling downward through his torso. The exit point was near his right shoulder blade. His flight suit was soaked in blood. His face was the color of concrete, but his eyes were open, and when he saw her, he smiled. "Took you long enough, Captain. I told Torres to tell you to shut up. Since when do I listen to Air Force?" Rachel knelt beside him. Her fingers moved to the entry wound, probing without touching the metal. Entry angle, steep, left to right. The panel had gone between the 3rd and 4th ribs. She needed to know what it was touching, what it was pressing against, what would happen when she pulled it out. "How's your breathing?" "Shallow. Hurts like a son of a bitch on the left side. Right side is okay. Any numbness? Tingling in your hands?" "Left hand is cold. Can't feel my pinky or ring finger." That's the subclavian compression. The metal's pressing against the artery. It's not severed. If it were, you'd be dead already. But it's close. Brennan looked at her with those steady eyes. The same eyes she remembered from Kandahar. The same impossible calm. "How close?" "Millimeters. So if the plane hits turbulence and the metal shifts..." "Don't finish that sentence." Rachel turned to Torres. "I need the second medical kit. Now. And I need you standing next to me with suction ready. When I pull this out, we have maybe 8 seconds before the bleed becomes uncontrollable." Torres scrambled for the kit. Brennan watched Rachel's face. He was reading her the way he always had. Not her words, but her eyes, her jaw, the tiny muscles around her mouth that tightened when she was worried. "Captain." "What?" "You look good. You have a piece of an airplane through your chest." "Still, you look good. Better than Kandahar." "You looked better in Kandahar. You didn't have any extra holes." He laughed. It turned into a cough. The cough moved the metal. Rachel saw it shift, a fraction of a millimeter, and her hands shot out and braced the panel, holding it still. Holding it in place with nothing but her grip and her will, and the absolute refusal to let this man die. "Don't laugh. Don't cough. Don't breathe deeper than you have to." "Yes, ma'am." Torres returned with the kit. Rachel opened it one-handed, her left hand still bracing the metal in Brennan's chest. She pulled out clamps, suction, a scalpel, laid them on the seat beside her in the order she would need them. The plane lurched, hard. Everything shifted, patience, equipment, blood on the floor sloshing like water on a boat deck. Rachel didn't move. Her hands stayed locked on the metal. Her body absorbed the turbulence through her knees and her core and her absolute stubbornness. Torres grabbed the overhead rail. "Turbulence every 30 to 40 seconds. I've been timing it." "How long are the stable windows?" 20 seconds, maybe 25. "That's enough." Torres stared at her. 20 seconds is enough to extract embedded shrapnel from a chest cavity. "I did one in 11 seconds in Kandahar." Rachel looked at Brennan. "He was there." Brennan nodded. "She did." "Marine named Gutierrez." I counted. "Here's what's going to happen." Rachel's voice shifted into command mode. The voice she'd buried for 3 years. The voice that had held together operating rooms made of sand and chaos. Torres, you're on suction. The moment the metal clears the wound channel, I need that field clean. 1 second delay and I can't see the bleed. 1 second is the difference. Understood. Brennan, you're going to stay conscious. You're going to look at me. You don't close your eyes. You hear me? I hear you. When I tell you to exhale, you exhale. Long and slow. That drops the pressure in your chest cavity and gives me a better angle on the subclavian. You're going to clamp it before it blows. That's the plan. What's the backup plan? There is no backup plan. I don't miss. Brennan looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. No, you never did. Rachel positioned herself, right hand on the metal, left hand holding the clamp, ready. Torres beside her was suction. The plane rumbled. She counted, felt the rhythm, waited for the stable window. Brennan, exhale, now. He breathed out, long and slow. Rachel pulled the metal from his chest in one fluid motion. Blood erupted from the wound. Torres hit it with suction. The field cleared for 2 seconds. Just 2 seconds. And in those 2 seconds, Rachel saw the subclavian artery, saw it pulsing, saw the tear where the metal had scraped it. 1 millimeter from rupture. She clamped it. Clean. Perfect. First try. Blood stopped. Torres suctioned the remaining fluid. Rachel packed the wound, applied pressure, counted. The plane bucked again. She held. Torres held. Brennan's eyes stayed locked on hers. The monitor beside them, the portable unit Torres had set up, beeped steadily. Heart rate high but stable. Pressure dropping but holding. Alive. Stable, Torres whispered. He's stable. Brennan's hand found Rachel's wrist. His grip was weak, but his eyes were fierce. See, Captain, you didn't miss. Rachel pulled her wrist free, not because she didn't want him holding on, because if he kept holding on, she was going to feel something, and she couldn't afford to feel anything right now. She stood up. Her leg nearly gave out. She caught herself on the bulkhead and turned to Torres. 6 patients left. 81 minutes. Show me the worst one. Torres pointed toward the center of the cabin. Rachel moved. Her limp was savage now. Each step cost her something she'd have to pay for later. But later was later, and right now a Marine with a collapsed chest was turning blue 10 feet away from her. She knelt beside him, put her hands on his chest, felt the deviation. Left tension pneumothorax. Classic. Lethal if untreated. She'd done this 100 times. She could do it with her eyes closed. She reached for a chest tube. Behind her, Brennan's voice, quiet meant only for Torres. That woman carried me out of a burning vehicle in Kandahar with a broken femur. Her femur, not mine. She didn't tell anyone until the next morning. Torres looked at Rachel, at her limp, at her hands moving with impossible precision. Who the hell is she? She's Angel 6, and she's just getting started. The chest tube slid into the Marine's 5th intercostal space, and the trapped air hissed out like a whisper from a dying man. His chest expanded. His color shifted from blue-gray to something closer to human. His eyes flew open, and he grabbed Rachel's wrist with a grip that could have bent steel. Easy, easy, you're okay. Breathe. Slow. I can't. I thought I was. You're not. Breathe. In through your nose. Slow. He breathed. His grip loosened. Rachel secured the tube, checked the seal, and looked at Torres. Name? Sergeant First Class Diego Reyes, 29. Reyes, you're going to lie still and breathe. Don't move. Don't try to help anyone. Your only job right now is oxygen in, oxygen out. Understood? Reyes nodded. His eyes were wet. He was trying not to cry, the way young men do when they've been close enough to death to feel its breath, but too proud to admit they were afraid. Rachel was already moving. Second pneumothorax case, right side. Less severe than Reyes, but deteriorating fast. She did the needle decompression first, bought herself time, then inserted the chest tube. 40 seconds start to finish. Torres watched her hands and said nothing. There was nothing to say. He'd been a surgeon for 12 years and he was watching someone operate on a level he didn't know existed. "That's 3 down," Rachel said. "Show me the compound fractures." Torres led her to 2 Marines lying side by side. The first had a compound fracture of the left femur, bone through skin, the sharp white edge of it visible through torn flesh. The second had a shattered tibia and what Rachel suspected was internal bleeding from the way his abdomen was rigid and distended. She knelt beside the first Marine. Young. Couldn't have been more than 21. His face was locked in a grimace, and his hands were clenched into fists at his sides. "What's your name?" Lance Corporal Evan Marsh." "Marsh, I'm going to stabilize your leg. It's going to hurt. I won't lie to you about that." "It already hurts, ma'am." "It's going to hurt more, but it's going to hurt for about 30 seconds, and then it's going to get better. Can you give me 30 seconds? He looked at her, at the calm in her eyes, at the steadiness of her hands. "Yes, ma'am." Rachel reduced the fracture. Marsh screamed, short, sharp, animal. Torres braced the leg while Rachel splinted it with materials from the medical kit and 2 pieces of aluminum she'd ripped from a damaged overhead bin. Not elegant, functional. The bone was back under the skin. The bleeding had slowed. "Good man, Marsh. Worst part's over." Marsh was breathing hard, tears running down his face, but he nodded. "Thank you, ma'am." Rachel moved to the second Marine, Staff Sergeant Luis Medina, 34. His eyes were glassy and his breathing was shallow. She pressed her hands against his abdomen and felt what she feared. Rigid, distended, the unmistakable feel of internal hemorrhage. "Torres, when did he last have a blood pressure check?" Torres looked at the portable monitor. 15 minutes ago, 95/60. "Check it now." Torres wrapped the cuff, pumped, watched the numbers. His face went white. 78/45. "He's bleeding internally, spleen or liver. I can't tell without imaging, and we don't have imaging." Rachel looked at the medical kit, looked at the 4 units of O-negative blood, 4 units for 7 patients, one of whom was a United States Senator whose survival was a matter of national security. "Torres, how much blood has the Senator lost?" "I packed his wound about 40 minutes ago. It's been holding. His pressure was 100/65 last check. And Medina here is at 78/45 and dropping." Torres understood. She could see it on his face. The calculation, the horror of it. "You want to give the blood to Medina instead of the Senator. Medina dies in the next 20 minutes without a transfusion. The Senator's wound is packed and stable. He can wait. If the Senator's pack fails, then I'll deal with it. Medina first." Torres hesitated. 1 second. 2. Then he grabbed 2 units of O-negative and handed them to Rachel. She set up the transfusion line with hands that moved so fast Torres could barely track them. The blood began flowing into Medina's veins. His pressure wouldn't climb fast, but it would hold. It would buy time. "That leaves 2 units, Torres said quietly, "for 6 patients. I know the math." "What if—" "I know the math, Torres." He stopped asking. Rachel stood. Her leg was on fire now. The constant kneeling, the standing, the moving through a lurching aircraft, every motion pulled at the scar tissue, ground the damaged nerves, sent lightning bolts of pain from her hip to her ankle. She gripped a seat back and breathed through it. 2 seconds. 3. Then she moved again. 58 minutes to landing. She checked on Brennan. He was where she'd left him, propped against the bulkhead, his wound packed and clamped. His color was marginally better. His eyes tracked her as she approached. "How are the others?" "You're not the doctor here, Brennan." "How are they?" Rachel looked at him. Stubborn, impossible, infuriating. "Webb didn't make it. Everyone else is holding." Brennan closed his eyes, opened them. Webb was 23. He just got engaged last month, Showed me the ring on the way up. Couldn't stop talking about her. Emily. Her name was Emily. Rachel felt something crack behind her sternum. She pushed it down. I need to check the senator. Captain. What? You made the right call, coming up here. I know what it cost you. You don't know what it cost me. I was there, remember? I was there when Davies... Don't! The word came out like a blade, sharp enough to cut. Don't say his name. Not up here. Not now. Brennan went quiet. Rachel moved away. Her hands were steady. They were always steady. It was everything else that shook. Senator Richard Cahill was lying on a makeshift stretcher near the front of the cabin. Mid-60s, silver hair matted with blood and sweat. His suit jacket had been cut away and his shirt was soaked through. Torres's packing job on the chest wound was competent. Better than competent, actually. The man knew his fundamentals, but the senator's face told a different story than the bandages. Gray, sweating, lips with a bluish tint. Rachel checked his pulse. Rapid, thready. She pressed her hand against the packing. Wet. Too wet. Torres, when did you last change this packing? I haven't. I packed it once and it's soaked through. He's been bleeding through the pack for at least 20 minutes. Rachel pulled the packing away. Blood welled up immediately. Bright red. Arterial. This isn't shrapnel in the chest wall. This is shrapnel in the chest cavity. He's got an intercostal artery bleeder. Torres went pale. I thought it was superficial. The entry wound was small. Entry wounds lie. Always. Rachel was already repacking, applying direct pressure with one hand while reaching for instruments with the other. I need to get in there and clamp that artery or he bleeds out in the next 15 minutes. You're going to operate on a sitting senator in a moving plane? I'm going to operate on a bleeding patient in whatever conditions I've got. His title doesn't change his anatomy. She laid out instruments, scalpel, clamps, suction. The plane bucked and she rode it out on her knees, hands never leaving the senator's chest. Torres, hold pressure here. Don't let go until I tell you. Torres put his hands where hers had been. Rachel moved to the senator's side, found the entry wound, and began to widen it. She needed access, needed to see the bleeder. The senator's eyes flew open. What are you? Senator Cahill, my name is Captain Rachel Shepard. I'm a Navy combat surgeon. You have an arterial bleed in your chest, and I need to stop it. This is going to hurt, and I apologize for that, but I don't have time for anesthesia, and you don't have time for me to explain. Navy? Combat? What the hell is happening? Sir, I need you to be very brave for about 4 minutes. Can you do that? The senator looked at her. At the blood on her hands, the flight suit, the absolute certainty in her eyes. He was a politician. He'd spent 30 years reading people. And whatever he read in Rachel Shepard's face made him lie back and nod. Do what you have to do. Rachel cut. The senator gasped. She found the bleeder in 90 seconds. Intercostal artery, nicked by the shrapnel, pumping blood into the chest cavity with every heartbeat. She clamped it. The bleeding stopped. She packed the cavity, sutured the wound edges, and dressed it. The senator was breathing hard, tears streaming down his face, but the color was already coming back. His pressure would climb. He'd live. You're done, Senator. Lie still. Thank you. His voice was shaking. Thank you, Captain. Rachel didn't answer. She was already turning away because behind her, Torres was yelling. Captain! Medina! His pressure's crashing again. Rachel moved. Medina, the internal bleeder she'd given 2 units of blood, was deteriorating. His abdomen was more distended than before. The transfusion was keeping his pressure up, but the bleeding hadn't stopped. It was never going to stop, not without surgery. She knelt beside him, pressed her hands against his belly, felt the fluid shifting underneath. Massive hemorrhage. Spleen. Had to be. I have to open him up. Torres stared at her. Here? On this plane? He dies if I don't. The blood I gave him is just filling a bathtub with the drain open. I need to find the source and stop it. We have 2 units of blood left. I know. And 6 patients who might need them. I know, Torres. If you use them on Medina and the senator starts bleeding again, then I'll figure it out. But right now, this man dies in 10 minutes if I don't open his abdomen and take out his spleen. Torres looked at her for a long moment. She could see the conflict on his face, the calculus of combat medicine, the math that no one teaches you in medical school because no classroom can prepare you for choosing who gets the last of the blood. What do you need? You, suction, retractors, and hold the damn flashlight steady because that's the best surgical light I've got. She opened Medina's abdomen. A laparotomy in a flying airplane in a storm. The incision was clean. The blood that poured out was dark, venous and arterial mixed. The spleen was ruptured, completely, unsalvageable. She'd known it before she went in, but seeing it confirmed everything. The plane lurched, blood sloshed across her hands. Torres nearly dropped the flashlight. Steady, Torres. I'm steady. Hold the retractor. Don't move. She clamped the splenic artery. The bleeding slowed. She worked fast, faster than she'd ever worked in any operating room, faster than she'd worked in Kandahar, faster than she'd worked in the sand. Because in Kandahar, she'd had backup coming. Here there was nothing, no one coming, no relief, just her hands and Torres's flashlight and a man's life measured in heartbeats. The spleen came out. She packed the cavity, checked for additional bleeders, found one, a small mesenteric vessel torn by the shrapnel. Clamped it, tied it off, packed again. Pressure? She asked. Torres checked. Climbing, 82/50, 85/52. It's coming up. Rachel sutured the abdomen. Her stitches were perfect. Even here, even now, even kneeling in blood on the floor of a broken airplane, her stitches were perfect. Then the monitor behind her screamed. Not Medina, not the senator, not any of the Marines she'd already treated. Brennan. Rachel was on her feet before Torres could speak. She crossed the cabin in 4 strides, her leg forgotten, the pain irrelevant. Brennan's monitor was alarming. His heart rate had spiked to 160 and was climbing. His pressure was dropping. His face had gone from gray to white. Brennan, look at me. His eyes found hers, glassy, fading. Something's wrong, Captain. I can feel it. Something's shifted. Rachel pulled back his bandage. The wound she'd packed was bleeding again. Not from the original site, from deeper. The clamp she'd placed on his subclavian artery had slipped. The turbulence, the constant shaking of the plane. The clamp had moved just enough. Torres, get over here, now! Torres was beside her in seconds. Rachel had her hands in Brennan's chest before Torres even knelt down. She could feel the artery, feel the blood pumping out of it, feel the clamp that had shifted 2 millimeters, 2 millimeters between life and death. I need to reclamp, but the angle is different now. The tissue has swollen around the original site. Can you do it? I don't have a choice. Brennan's hand found her arm. His grip was weak, getting weaker. Captain, if you can't... Shut up, Brennan. Rachel. He'd never called her by her first name. Not in Kandahar. Not ever. The sound of it, her name in his mouth, spoken with the quiet acceptance of a man who thought he was about to die, hit her harder than anything had in 3 years. You don't get to die, Danny. You hear me? I didn't fly into a storm and jump out of a helicopter and pull a piece of airplane out of your chest so you could die on me 20 minutes later. That is not how this works. You sound like Kandahar. Good, because in Kandahar I didn't lose you, and I'm not losing you now. She repositioned the clamp. Her fingers were slippery with blood. The plane chose that exact moment to hit the worst turbulence yet. A drop so violent that Torres flew sideways and hit the bulkhead. Equipment scattered across the floor. The lights flickered. Rachel didn't move. Her hand stayed inside Brennan's chest. Her fingers stayed on the artery. The clamp stayed exactly where she needed it. The turbulence passed. Torres scrambled back to her side. Blood was everywhere, on her hands, her arms, her flight suit, her face. "Clamp is set," she said. Torres checked the monitor, held his breath. The numbers stabilized, heart rate dropping, pressure climbing. "He's holding. My God, he's holding." Brennan's eyes were closed. For one terrible moment, Rachel thought she'd lost him. Then his chest rose, fell, rose again. "Danny!" His eyes opened, barely. "Still here, Captain, told you. I don't take orders from Air Force." Rachel pulled her hands from his chest. They were covered in his blood up to her elbows. She looked down at them and for 1 second, just one, she saw other hands. Her hands in Kandahar, covered in Davies's blood, putting him on a helicopter, telling him he'd be fine. "Don't. Not now. Not here." She pushed it down, stood up, turned to Torres. "How long until landing?" Torres checked. His voice was hollow. 39 minutes. 39 minutes. 6 patients alive, all critical. 2 units of blood remaining. 1 surgeon with a shattered leg and a pass that was trying to swallow her whole. Rachel wiped Brennan's blood on her flight suit and moved to check the next patient. Behind her, the monitor beeped steadily. "Alive, alive, alive." She kept walking. Because that's what Angel 6 did. She kept walking until everyone was saved, or until she couldn't walk anymore. And her leg was screaming at her that the second option was getting closer by the minute. 39 minutes felt like 39 years. Rachel moved between patients in a rhythm she'd forgotten she knew. Check vitals, adjust packing, tighten a splint, monitor a chest tube. Each task took seconds. Each second mattered. The plane lurched and shuddered and groaned, and she rode it like a sailor on a sinking ship. Bent knees, low center of gravity, hands always reaching for the next patient before her feet had finished carrying her there. Torres followed her. He'd stopped asking questions, stopped second-guessing. He just handed her what she needed before she asked, held what she told him to hold, and watched her with the expression of a man who was rearranging everything he thought he knew about medicine. "Reyes." Rachel knelt beside the first pneumothorax Marine. "How are you breathing?" "Better, lot better. Chest still hurts." "It's going to hurt for a while. That's normal. You're doing good." She checked his tube. Secure. Good output. She moved on. Marsh, the compound femur fracture, was gritting his teeth but stable. The improvised splint was holding. Rachel squeezed his shoulder as she passed. Didn't say anything. Didn't need to. The touch was enough. The third pneumothorax case was sleeping, or unconscious. Rachel checked his pupils, equal and reactive. Sleeping. Good. Sleep was the body's way of saying, "I trust you enough to let go for a minute." Medina, the splenectomy patient, was the one who worried her most. His pressure was climbing, but slowly. Too slowly. The 2 units of blood were doing their job, but his body had lost a lot, and there was no more to give. "Torres, what's his output?" "Minimal. He's dry." "Push fluids, whatever we've got. Saline, lactated ringers, I don't care. Volume is volume right now." "We're running low on saline too." "How low?" "1 bag." Rachel closed her eyes for half a second. 1 bag of saline, 2 units of blood, 6 living patients, 34 minutes to landing. The math kept getting uglier. "Give it to Medina. He needs the volume more than anyone else." Torres hooked up the last bag. The fluid ran into Medina's veins, and Rachel watched his monitor like a hawk. The numbers crept up. 87 over 53. 89 over 55. Slow. Painfully slow, but moving in the right direction. She allowed herself 1 breath. Then Marsh started yelling, "Something's wrong. Something's wrong with Jackson. He's shaking. Oh, God!" Rachel spun around. Lance Corporal Tyler Jackson, the Marine with the compound tibia fracture, the one she'd triaged as lower priority because his vitals had been stable, the one who'd been sitting quietly, patiently, waiting his turn, was seizing, his body rigid, his back arched, his eyes rolled back to white. She was beside him in 3 strides, Torres right behind her. What happened? Torres grabbed Jackson's shoulders, trying to hold him still. Don't restrain him. Let the seizure run. Time it. What's causing this? He was stable. Air embolism. Rachel's mind was racing. The pressure fluctuations. The compromised cabin. The compound fracture had introduced air into his venous system, and the altitude changes had expanded the bubbles. They traveled to his brain. The fracture site. Air got into his bloodstream. The pressure changes up here turned a small bubble into a big one. How do we treat an air embolism at altitude without a hyperbaric chamber? We improvise. Improvise how? Help me move him. Head down, feet up. Now. They tilted Jackson's body. Rachel grabbed anything she could find, a duffel bag, a folded jacket, and propped his legs high. The position was crude, but the physics were sound. Head lower than the heart. Let gravity pull the air bubbles away from the brain. The seizure continued. 20 seconds. 30. Jackson's body jerked and twisted and fought against itself. Torres, maximum oxygen, highest flow you've got. Get that mask on his face. Torres cranked the emergency oxygen to full and pressed the mask over Jackson's mouth and nose. The idea was simple in theory, brutal in execution. Flood his system with so much oxygen that the nitrogen bubbles in his blood would shrink, dissolve, disappear. This is going to work. Rachel said it like a command, like she could order the laws of physics to obey her the same way she ordered Marines and medics. 40 seconds. The seizing slowed. Jackson's body began to relax. The rigid arch of his back softened. His eyes stopped rolling. 50 seconds. The seizure stopped. Rachel checked his pupils. Reactive. Both sides. She held up 2 fingers in front of his face. How many? Jackson blinked. Confused. Disoriented. 2? What's your name? Jackson. Tyler Jackson. Lance Corporal. What branch? Marines. What happened to me? You had a seizure. You're okay now, don't move. Torres was staring at Rachel. His hands were shaking again. The adrenaline backwash that hits when the crisis passes and your body remembers it's afraid. Where did you learn that? That specific technique. I've never seen anyone treat an air embolism like that in the field. Rachel didn't look up. She was adjusting the oxygen flow, checking Jackson's vitals, making sure the crisis was actually over and not just pausing. I didn't learn it anywhere. I made it up. You made it up. Combat medicine is 10% training and 90% refusing to let someone die. You run out of textbook solutions about 5 minutes into any real crisis. After that, it's just you and whatever you can think of. Torres opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. You know you just performed 3 separate emergency procedures that most surgeons would never attempt in a fully equipped OR, and you did them on the floor of a broken airplane. You know that, right? I'm aware of my surroundings, Torres. I'm just saying, don't just say, check the senator's pressure. Torres moved. Rachel allowed herself another breath. Her lungs felt tight. Her leg was beyond pain now. It had entered that territory where the nerve signals overloaded, and everything below her left hip became a white-hot hum that she could only manage by refusing to acknowledge it. 28 minutes. The radio crackled. A voice she hadn't heard in almost an hour. A voice she'd been perfectly happy not hearing. Foster, Shepard, this is Dr. Holt. I've been monitoring via satellite link. Rachel didn't reach for the radio. Torres looked at her. She shook her head. Holt continued. I've been listening to everything. The surgeries, all of it. I need to. Brennan reached over and turned the radio volume down. Not off, just low enough that Holt's voice became a murmur instead of a presence. You can deal with him on the ground, Brennan said. Right now, he doesn't matter. Rachel looked at Brennan, at the man she'd saved twice in the last hour, at the hole in his chest and the blood on his clothes, and the steady, unshakable calm in his eyes. Since when do you give me advice, Lieutenant? Since you jumped out of a helicopter to save my life. I figure that buys me some capital. She almost smiled. Almost. The plane shuddered. A different kind of shudder this time. Mechanical, structural. The pilot's voice came over the intercom, tight and controlled. Folks, we've been cleared for emergency landing at Johns Hopkins Bayview Airfield. Beginning descent in 3 minutes. It's going to be rough. The storm hasn't cleared the approach path. Brace for significant turbulence on the way down. Rachel looked at Torres. Significant turbulence means my patients move. My patients move means chest tubes shift, clamps slip, sutures tear. I need every single patient secured before we start descending. They worked fast. Rachel moved from patient to patient, checking every tube, every clamp, every bandage, every splint. She braced Brennan's wound with extra packing and secured it with tape she'd pulled from the medical kit. She tightened Medina's abdominal dressing. She reinforced Marsh's splint. She repositioned Jackson so the oxygen mask couldn't shift during turbulence. Torres worked the other side of the cabin, checking straps, securing equipment, making sure nothing would become a projectile when the plane started bouncing. Torres, yeah? When we land, there's going to be a trauma team waiting. Johns Hopkins. I need you to handle the handoffs. Each patient, each injury, each specific treatment I performed. Don't leave anything out. They need to know exactly what I did in here so they can continue without guessing. You're not going to do the handoffs yourself? I'll be there, but my leg is about to give out, and I'm not sure how much longer I can stand. So you need to be ready to take over if I go down. Torres looked at her leg. For the first time, he really looked at it. At the way she was favoring it, at the slight tremor in her left thigh, at the sweat on her face that had nothing to do with the heat of the cabin and everything to do with pain she'd been suppressing for 90 minutes. How bad is it? Bad enough. Captain, it's not going to kill me, Torres. It's just going to hurt. And right now, pain is the least interesting thing happening on this airplane. The descent began. The pilot wasn't exaggerating. The plane dropped through the storm like a stone through water. Sudden, violent, lurching. Rachel grabbed an overhead rail with one hand and braced against the bulkhead with the other. Her left leg buckled twice. She caught herself both times. The monitors screamed, not because anyone was crashing, because the turbulence was shaking the leads loose, creating false alarms that spiked her heart rate every time the tone changed. Ignore the monitors, she shouted to Torres. Watch the patients, eyes on chests. If they're breathing, they're alive. The plane dropped again, hard. Marsh screamed as the jolt hit his fractured leg. Senator Cahill groaned. Reyes gripped his chest tube with both hands like a man holding a lifeline. Brennan was silent. His eyes were open, locked on the ceiling. His lips were moving. Rachel realized he was counting the seconds between jolts, timing the turbulence the way she taught him to time mortar intervals in Kandahar. 3 seconds between the last two, he said quietly, getting closer together. We're in the thick of it. Stop counting and breathe, Brennan. Can't help it, you trained me too well. The plane lurched sideways, then dropped, then caught itself with a groan of metal that sounded like the aircraft was arguing with gravity about who was going to win. Rachel held on. Torres held on. The patients held on. Everyone held on because there was nothing else to do. Then, a bump. Not turbulence. Contact. The landing gear hitting concrete. The plane bounced, hit again, and this time it stayed down. The engines roared in reverse thrust. The brakes screamed. They stopped. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The silence after the engines cut was so absolute, it felt like a physical weight. Then Torres exhaled, a sound that was half laugh, half sob. We're down! Oh my God, we're down! The emergency hatch blew open. Light poured in. Not the sickly red of emergency floods, but real light. Floodlights from the tarmac. Blue and red emergency lights spinning. And people. A wall of people. Paramedics, nurses, physicians, an entire mass casualty response team pouring toward the plane. Rachel straightened up, her left leg locked, refused to bend. She grabbed the nearest seat back and forced herself upright. Torres, handoffs, now. Start with Brennan, he's the most critical. Then Medina, then the senator, then the pneumothorax cases, then the fractures. Torres was already moving, directing paramedics, pointing, giving rapid-fire handoff reports. This one, tension pneumo, bilateral chest tubes, placed in flight. This one, splenectomy in flight, 2 units O-neg, 1 bag saline, pressured 91/58 last check. The paramedics hesitated. One of them, a veteran trauma nurse with 20 years on her face, looked at Torres. Did you say splenectomy? In flight? In flight, during a storm, on the floor of this plane, she did it. The nurse looked at Rachel. Rachel was supervising Brennan's transfer, walking beside the stretcher, one hand on the rail, her limp so severe now that she was essentially dragging her left leg. Brennan, they're going to take you into surgery. Your subclavian clamp needs to be permanently repaired. You're going to be fine. Brennan reached up and grabbed her hand. His grip was different now. Not the desperate clutch of a dying man, but the firm hold of someone who wanted to be remembered. Thank you, Captain. Don't thank me. Thank Torres. He kept you alive until I got there. I'm not thanking Torres. I'm thanking you. She squeezed his hand once, released it. The stretcher moved toward the ambulance. Brennan kept his eyes on her until the doors closed. Rachel turned. Her leg gave out. She went down on one knee on the tarmac, hard. The impact sent a shock wave through her entire body. Torres was there in a second. The trauma nurse from Hopkins was there in 2. I'm fine. Get off me. I'm fine. You're not fine. Let us. I said I'm fine. She grabbed Torres's arm and hauled herself upright. Her face was white. Sweat ran down her temples. Her left leg was trembling so badly she could see it through the flight suit. How many patients transferred? She asked. All 6. All alive. All heading into surgery or stabilization. Webb? Torres's face tightened. The body recovery team has him. Rachel nodded. Webb, 23, engaged to a girl named Emily, dead before Rachel ever set foot on that plane. Some things couldn't be fixed. Some people couldn't be saved. And the weight of that truth never got lighter, no matter how many you pulled back from the edge. A car pulled up on the tarmac. The door opened. Dr. Kenneth Holt stepped out. He looked different. Not his clothes. He was still wearing his white coat, still had his stethoscope around his neck, still carried the physical markers of his authority. But his face had changed. The condescension was gone. The superiority was gone. What was left was something Rachel had never seen on Kenneth Holt before and never expected to see. Shame. He walked toward her, slowly, carefully. The way you approach someone when you know you've wronged them and you're not sure they'll let you close enough to apologize. Shepard. Dr. Holt. I listened. On the satellite link. All of it. Every surgery. Every decision. He stopped 4 feet from her. The splenectomy. The dual procedure. Coaching Brennan through the pericardiocentesis while you operated on the senator. The air embolism. I heard all of it. Rachel said nothing. She was leaning on Torres and she hated it, but her leg wasn't giving her a choice anymore. I shoved you. Holt's voice cracked, actually cracked. In my ER. I shoved you with my clipboard and told you to stay back. I told you that you were limping and useless. You said stay in triage. You didn't say useless. I thought it. You could see it on my face. Don't pretend you couldn't. Rachel held his gaze. Yeah, I could see it. I've been an ER chief for 11 years. I have reviewed your file tonight. 47 thoracotomies under enemy fire, 4 combat deployments, 16-hour solo mass casualty operations, a Silver Star, 2 Bronze Stars, and a Navy Cross. Holt's voice was barely a whisper now. A Navy Cross, Shepard. Do you know how many combat surgeons have ever received a Navy Cross? I don't count medals, Dr. Holt. I count patients. And tonight you just saved 6 people that no one else on Earth could have saved. In a flying airplane, during a storm, with supplies that wouldn't fill a first aid kit. Holt took a breath. His hands were shaking. Why didn't you ever tell me? Tell anyone? Rachel looked at him for a long time. At his clean white coat, at his steady, comfortable life, at the man who ran an ER and thought he understood trauma because he saw car accidents and heart attacks and the tidy, manageable emergencies of a civilian hospital. Because the last time I was Angel 6, 4 of my patients died in a helicopter crash and my leg got crushed under the wreckage. Because I certified them for transport. Because I told their families they'd be okay. Because I carried that for 3 years, and the only way I could survive it was to stop being the person it happened to. Holt said nothing. So I came to your hospital, took a floor position, sorted your charts, took your orders, let you shove me with your clipboard and tell me to stay back. Because staying back meant staying safe. And staying safe meant never having to hold another dying Marine and wonder if it was my fault. The tarmac was quiet. The ambulances had gone. The floodlights hummed. Somewhere in the distance, a helicopter's rotors were winding down. Holt stepped closer. Rachel, I am sorry. Not just for tonight, for 3 years of not seeing you. Rachel felt the words land, felt them settle into the place where 3 years of silence had lived. She didn't forgive him, not yet, maybe not ever, but she heard him, and right now that was enough. Colonel Westcott appeared from behind the last ambulance. He walked up to Rachel, nodded once, the nod of a soldier acknowledging another soldier, and handed her a sat phone. Pentagon wants a word. Rachel stared at the phone. I'm not talking to the Pentagon tonight, Colonel. It's not the Pentagon asking. It's Brennan's mother. She just found out her son is alive. She wants to thank the person who saved him. Rachel took the phone. Her hand was shaking. For the first time all night, her hand was actually shaking. She pressed it to her ear. Ma'am, this is Captain Shepard. A woman's voice, broken, sobbing. Is he alive? Please, is my boy alive? Your boy is alive, ma'am. He's in surgery at Johns Hopkins right now. He's strong, he's brave, and he's going to be okay. The woman on the other end of the line wept. Rachel listened. She didn't say anything else. She just listened to a mother cry with relief, and she held the phone with a hand that had been inside that mother's son's chest an hour ago. And she let herself feel, for one moment, just one, what it meant to bring someone back. She handed the phone to Westcott, turned to Torres. Take me inside. I need to sit down before I fall down. Torres put his arm around her waist. Rachel leaned on him and walked toward the hospital entrance. Each step was agony. Each step was a choice. Behind her, on the tarmac, Holt watched her go. A limping woman in a blood-soaked flight suit, dragging a broken leg across the concrete, held up by an Air Force surgeon who just watched her do the impossible 7 times in 90 minutes. Holt looked down at his clipboard. He was still holding it. He'd been holding it all night. He dropped it in the nearest trash can and walked inside. Rachel didn't sleep that night. Torres helped her to a chair in the Hopkins waiting area, and she sat there for 6 hours while surgeons worked on Brennan 2 floors above her. Her flight suit was stiff with dried blood. Her left leg had swollen to the point where she couldn't bend her knee. A Hopkins orthopedic resident tried to examine her twice. She waved him off both times. I'll deal with my leg when Brennan's out of surgery, not before. Ma'am, you could have vascular compromise. If the swelling, I've had this leg for 3 years. It swells, It hurts. It doesn't kill me. Go help someone who needs it. The resident retreated. Torres brought her coffee. She held the cup with both hands and stared at the far wall and waited. At 4:17 a.m., the surgical team came down. Dr. Priya Nair, Hopkins's chief of cardiothoracic surgery, still in her gown, mask hanging around her neck, exhaustion carved into every line of her face. Rachel stood up. Her legs screamed. She ignored it. Brennan, Dr. Nair looked at her for a long moment. The subclavian repair is holding. We reinforced your clamp, which, by the way, was placed with a precision I'd expect from someone using fluoroscopic guidance, not from someone kneeling on the floor of an airplane in a storm. Is he alive? He's alive. He's going to recover fully, because of what you did up there. Rachel's knees buckled. Not from her leg, from everything else. Torres caught her elbow, and she steadied herself and nodded once. The others? Medina is stable. Your splenectomy was textbook. Senator Cahill's intercostal repair is holding. No additional hemorrhage. The pneumothorax patients are all breathing independently. Marsh's femur has been surgically reduced and pinned. Jackson, the air embolism, is neurologically intact. No brain damage. Full recovery expected. 6 patients. 6 saves. On the floor of a broken airplane at 30,000 feet during a storm. Dr. Nair stepped closer. I've been a surgeon for 22 years, Captain. I have never, and I want you to hear this clearly, I have never seen anything like what you did tonight. The field splenectomy alone would be historic. The dual operation, coaching a wounded medic through a pericardiocentesis while performing an open abdominal surgery. There's no precedent. There's no case study. There's no one in the world who would have attempted what you attempted, and there is certainly no one who would have succeeded. Rachel looked at the floor. I had good help. Torres kept it together. Torres shook his head. No, I held a flashlight and tried not to pass out. You did the rest. Rachel didn't argue. She didn't have the energy. Can I see Brennan? Dr. Nair nodded. Room 412. He's been asking for you since he woke up from anesthesia. Apparently the first words out of his mouth were, "Where's Angel 6?" And he's been saying it every 10 minutes since. Rachel walked to the elevator. Torres walked with her. Neither of them spoke. There was nothing to say that the night hadn't already said. Room 412. Brennan was propped up in bed, chest bandaged, monitors beeping, IV lines running into both arms. His face had color again. Not much, but enough. His eyes were heavy with post-surgical sedation, but they sharpened the moment she walked through the door. Captain, Lieutenant, you look terrible. You have a hole in your chest. Had, past tense, thanks to you. Brennan shifted in the bed, winced. Sit down, you're making me nervous standing there on that leg. Rachel pulled a chair beside his bed and sat. The relief of taking weight off her leg was so intense, she almost gasped. They sat in silence for a moment, the kind of silence that only exists between two people who have shared something that no one else will ever fully understand. Captain, I need to tell you something. If it's thank you, you already said it. It's not thank you. Brennan looked at her. His eyes were clear now, focused. When I was lying on that plane with that metal in my chest, and Torres was panicking, and I could feel myself bleeding out, I wasn't scared. You should have been. I wasn't, because I knew you'd come. I knew it the way I know my own name. Because in Kandahar, when everything went to hell and people were dying and the whole world was on fire, you never didn't come. You always showed up. Every single time. Rachel's throat tightened. And when they told me you'd left the Navy, when they said you'd disappeared, I didn't believe it. Not really. I thought, she's just resting. She's just catching her breath. Angel 6 doesn't quit. She just needs a minute. It was 3 years, Brennan. That's a long minute. Yeah, it was. He reached for her hand. She let him take it. But you came back, and that's the part that matters. Rachel held his hand and said nothing. Outside the window, Baltimore was waking up. Traffic sounds, car horns, the ordinary machinery of a world that didn't know what had happened at 30,000 feet last night. She stayed with Brennan until he fell asleep. Then she stood up, felt her leg nearly fold beneath her, and limped out of the room. Torres was waiting in the hallway. There's about 40 reporters downstairs. Someone leaked the story. Senator's office, probably. They're asking for the surgeon who operated on a plane. No press. That's what Colonel Westcott told them, but they're not leaving, and there's something else. What? Holt's here. He's been here all night. He's been sitting in the lobby with a folder. He wants to talk to you. Rachel leaned against the wall, closed her eyes. Her body was shutting down. The adrenaline had been gone for hours. What was left was bone-deep exhaustion, pain that pulsed with every heartbeat, and a hollowness inside her chest that she recognized as the space where 3 years of hiding used to live. Send him up. Holt appeared 2 minutes later. He was still wearing his white coat. His eyes were red. He hadn't slept either. The folder in his hand was thick, official-looking, with the St. Mercy General logo on the cover. Shepard. Dr. Holt. He stood in front of her. Didn't sit. Didn't try to establish authority or control the conversation. Just stood there like a man delivering something he'd been carrying all night. I went before the hospital board at 2 a.m., emergency session. I told them everything. Who you are, what you did tonight, what I did to you for 3 years. I told them about the clipboard. I told them about telling you to stay in triage. I told them I had the most qualified trauma surgeon in the country working as a floor nurse on my night shift, and I was too arrogant and too blind to see it. Rachel said nothing. They've created a position, Director of Trauma Services, full surgical privileges, your own department, your own team, your own budget. It's yours if you want it. And if I don't want it, Hope flinched, then we don't deserve you. And I'll write you a recommendation for any hospital in the country. Rachel looked at the folder, at the offer it represented, at the door that was opening after 3 years of sealed-shut darkness. I have conditions. Holt's head came up. Something flickered in his eyes. Hope. I train every trauma resident myself, personally. I design the curriculum. No one finishes my program without field simulation. Real chaos, real pressure, real decisions. Done. I want a satellite link to military medical units worldwide. When a combat surgeon in Afghanistan or Somalia or anywhere else needs consultation, they call us. We answer, day or night. I'll have to get the board to. You said you went before them at 2 a.m. You can go again. Holt almost smiled. Done. Brennan, when he recovers, I want him on my team. Full position. No interviews. No committee review. He's mine. He's not even a civilian physician. He performed a pericardiocentesis with a piece of airplane through his chest while I talked him through it from across a cabin. He's more qualified than half the surgeons on your staff. Get it done. Holt swallowed. Done. And Torres, he's Air Force, but he wants to transfer. I want him running my simulation lab. Done. One more thing. Name it. Rachel looked at him, hard. The look she used to give Marine colonels and field commanders and anyone who stood between her and a patient. You never touch me with a clipboard again. Holt's face crumbled. Not with anger, not with defensiveness, with the full, crushing weight of shame meeting accountability. Never again. I swear to you. Rachel took the folder, opened it, read the first page. Director of Trauma Services, Captain Rachel Shepard, MD. Effective immediately. When do I start? Whenever you're ready. She closed the folder. I started 90 minutes after you told me to stay in triage. Everything since then has just been paperwork. 3 days later, Rachel walked into St. Mercy General Hospital wearing scrubs and a badge that said, Director of Trauma Services. Her left leg still ached. It would always ache. but she didn't try to hide the limp anymore. She walked through the ER, and every nurse, every resident, every attending physician stopped what they were doing and watched her pass. Becky Callahan was at the triage desk, same spot where Rachel had sat 3 nights ago, sorting charts, being invisible. Becky's eyes were red. She'd been crying. When Rachel approached, Becky stood up so fast she knocked her chair over. "Rachel, Captain, I didn't know. None of us knew. If I had... You were the only person in this ER who ever told me I didn't have to take it, Becky. Don't apologize. You were the only one who saw me." Becky burst into tears. Rachel squeezed her arm and kept walking. Her first shift started at 7 a.m. By 7:42, the radio was already screaming, "Mass casualty, multi-car pileup on I-95, 12 incoming, critical." The ER erupted into controlled panic. Residents scrambled. Nurses prepped bays. Monitors were wheeled into position. And everyone, every single person, looked toward the center of the room where Rachel Shepard stood with her weight on her right leg and her eyes already calculating. "Resident Team 1, you've got the first 3 ambulances. Chest injuries go to Bay 1, abdominal to Bay 2, orthopedic to Bay 3. Resident Team 2, you're on blood bank. I want 20 units cross-matched and ready in 4 minutes. Team 3, portable ultrasound on every incoming patient before they hit a gurney. I want to know what I'm dealing with before I touch them." Nobody hesitated. Nobody questioned. They moved. Rachel limped between gurneys as the first ambulances unloaded. Her hands moved with the same precision they'd had at 30,000 feet. Her voice carried the same authority it had carried in Kandahar. The residents watched her triage, fast, decisive, ruthless in her prioritization. And they learned more in 20 minutes than they had in a year of lectures. One resident, a young woman named Kim, second year, terrified, froze over a patient with a flail chest. Her hands were shaking. Her eyes were filling with tears. Rachel was beside her in seconds. She didn't yell, didn't push her aside, didn't take over. "Kim, look at me." Kim looked up, tears on her cheeks. "What do you see when you look at this patient?" "I see he's flail chest, paradoxical breathing. I don't..." "Stop seeing the diagnosis. See the man. He's 43 years old. He's got a wedding ring on. Someone is waiting for him to come home tonight. Now tell me what you're going to do to make sure he gets there." Kim's hands stopped shaking. "Stabilize the flail segment, pain management, intubate if his oxygen drops below 90. Then do it." Kim did it, perfectly. Rachel moved on. The pile-up patients came in waves, and she handled them the way she'd handled everything, with hands that never trembled, a voice that never wavered, and a limp that followed her everywhere like a shadow that refused to leave. At the end of the shift, Holt found her in her new office. She was standing at the light board, reviewing x-rays, shifting her weight from one leg to the other in the constant negotiation between pain and function that defined her body now. 12 patients, 12 saves, 0 mortality. Rachel didn't turn around. That's the standard. Every day, no exceptions. "The residents are talking about you. One of them called you legendary." "I'm not legendary, Dr. Holt. I'm a surgeon who hid for 3 years because she was afraid of what her own hands could do. There's nothing legendary about fear. There's something legendary about overcoming it." Rachel turned from the light board, looked at him, at the man who'd shoved her with his clipboard and told her to stay back, at the man who'd listened to her save 7 lives on a satellite link and then gone to his hospital board at 2 in the morning to build her a department. "We'll see," she said. 6 months passed. The simulation lab was full. 20 residents. Brennan, healed, scarred, wearing a white coat for the first time in his life, stood beside Rachel, running the exercise. Torres manned the technical equipment, filling the room with the sounds and chaos of a combat mass casualty event. The residents were overwhelmed. Alarms screaming, simulated patients crashing, not enough hands, Not enough blood, not enough time. Exactly the way Rachel had designed it. You're freezing, Rachel called out to the room. When you freeze, people die. Calculate, move, prioritize. Who's critical? Who can wait? Who's already gone? Make the call and live with it. A resident looked up, panicked. I can't. There's too many. Brennan stepped in, calm, steady. The same steadiness Rachel had built into him in the sand on the other side of the world. There's always too many. That's not an excuse. That's the job. Pick one, save them, move to the next. Rachel watched Brennan teach. Watched the thing she'd given him, the calm, the focus, the refusal to quit, flow from him into 20 new doctors who would carry it into ERs and operating rooms and battlefields for the rest of their careers. Holt watched from the observation deck. The hospital board flanked him. One member, a woman in a gray suit, data analyst, numbers-driven, reviewed a printout. Trauma survivability is up 34% since she took over. Another board member shook his head. The residents she's trained are outperforming third-year fellows at other hospitals. Holt watched Rachel through the glass, watched her limp between the simulation stations, watched her pause beside each panicking resident and say the thing they needed to hear. Not the same thing every time, but the right thing every time. She's not just training surgeons, Holt said quietly. She's training soldiers, people who won't break. After the simulation, Rachel sat in her office. The light board hummed. X-rays from the day's cases hung in a row. She was tired. The good kind of tired, the kind that comes from work that matters. Her reflection in the window caught her off guard. She looked at it, really looked. Not the faded scrub she'd hidden in for 3 years. Not the invisible floor nurse who'd filed charts and said, "Yes, Dr. Holt," and tried to convince herself that being small was the same as being safe. Captain Rachel Shepard, Director of Trauma Services. Angel 6, still limping, still carrying Davies in the back of her mind. The 19-year-old boy who'd never come home. The ghost who lived in every decision she made. Still hearing the helicopter crash when the nights got too quiet. Still waking up at 3 a.m. with her hands reaching for patients who weren't there anymore. But standing, still standing. A knock on the doorframe. Brennan, his scar visible above the collar of his white coat. A phone in his hand. "Colonel Westcott, Satellite Link. They've got a field surgeon in East Africa with a complicated amputation. Needs consultation." Rachel took the phone, pressed it to her ear. "This is Angel 6. Talk to me." The words came out like breathing. Natural. Unstoppable. The identity she'd buried under 3 years of grief and guilt and silence. Alive again. Not because the grief was gone. Not because the guilt had lifted. Not because her leg had healed or Davies had come back, or the helicopter crash had rewritten itself into a different ending. Because she'd learned the only lesson that mattered. Survival doesn't mean the pain stops. It means you carry it and keep walking. It means you use what broke you to fix someone else. It means you answer the phone when it rings and say the name you tried to forget and do the work your hands were built to do. They told her to stay back. They told her she was limping. They told her she wasn't fit for trauma. And then 4 Marine helicopters landed on the roof, and the world found out what a limping nurse with steady hands and a buried past could do when the people she loved were dying. Rachel Shepard never stopped limping. She never stopped carrying the weight of the ones she'd lost. She never stopped hearing Davies' voice or seeing his 19-year-old face or wondering if she could have done something different. But she also never stopped saving lives, never stopped training the next generation to be braver and better and more prepared than she had been. Never stopped answering the satellite phone when it rang at 3 in the morning. Never stopped being the person that broken people called when no one else could help. Angel 6 didn't rise because the wounds healed. She rose because she decided that the wounds were not the end of the story. They were the beginning of the next one.